I'm going to begin on a note of dissent, which, by the way, none of my panelists agree on, but I'm going to start because at least it's going to get the conversation going. And so what I asked them in the green room is this. I mean, surely every book is about place. I mean, it's the one of the most essential components of whenever anyone starts to write, and in fact, not just fiction, but also nonfiction. And so surely every writer in the very act of writing conveys the spirit of place, that it's what breathing is to life, the sense of place is to writing. And in fact, we were trying to think of books that don't convey sense of place or deliberately kind of erase the feelings and the particularities of place, and there's very, very few. So I'm going to ask Geoff to respond to that, and then thereon.
Yeah, thank you. Well, what a great pleasure to be in this particular place again, actually. And yeah, I mean, I'll start by just throwing in something which I found so interesting. This photographer called Michael Ackerman. Some of you might know he's best known for his photographs of Varanasi, a book called End Time City. And for a photographer, and then in a subsequent book of his photographs called Fictions, he says, as far as I'm concerned, places don't exist, which is an extraordinary thing for a photographer to say, because you're documenting what's there. You're not inventing as you can with a book. Then he says rather brilliantly, as far as I'm concerned, a place is just my idea of it. And so, I mean, that's, it seems to me that's an extraordinary thing to try to do in photographs, to kind of denude the photograph of a lot of the information that it contains. And then in fiction, and I'm sort of setting this up just to sort of frame the conversation, in contradiction to that, I think of one of the great writers about place, Annie Dillard. In one of her essays in Teaching a Stone to Talk, she says, there's two things. She says, she never saw a tree that was no tree in particular. And of course, a tree, more than anywhere else, more than anything else, is rooted, tied to a place. And then she asks us to remember that life is always and only lived in the particular. So it's always got to be about place. And if you're writing fiction, a novel, the novel has tended, with a few exceptions, and because my mind has gone completely blank, I'll leave it to my co-panelists to remind us which ones they are. I mean, novels are always inextricably linked to the social landscape. Therefore, place is very important.
Is that for me? Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this place. As Geoff says, I quite agree with, I don't think one can write placelessly, really. And I think about my own writing and whether I could make place less of a thing. And I don't think I can. Even if I think about the themes in my writing, say dislocation, where are you going from? What are you going to? What are the emotions tied up with those places? What is the spirit of a place? I mean, the easy answer in my case in Guyana, it is dark rum, which is also the spirit of Bombay, a different brand. I was speaking with the great writer Vivek Shanbag before this, and he said language is place as well. And that got me thinking. I'm thinking about Bombay. Bombay has so many words for problems, for how things go wrong. Lafda, Locha, Golmal, Garbad, Vanda. That's telling you about not the physicality of a place, not the landmarks, but what's on people's mind. I'm thinking about the language of Guyana. The word for dawn in Guyana is a gorgeous word. It's called day clean. Like the day washing the night clean. And towards the end of the day, you don't have darkness descending on you. You have darkness gone catch we. Darkness is this thing that's coming for you, So it's so alive with the idea of language conjuring the spirit of place. It's not a sweltering day in Guyana, it's the sun hot boy, and someone will say heat hot boy. So the quality of the heat is hot. It is telling me about the weather in Guyana through language. I mean, to me, all of these things make the spirit of a place.
So, I mean, I think one of the obvious things that you do as a writer in trying to set up any story or whatever is to describe place. And many of the great storytellers, again, my mind goes blank, but I think of Martin Scorsese, who's devoted his entire life to telling stories of New York City. This is what makes that skill is a sensitivity to place, the spirit of the place, as the title of this panel says. And so I've written many city books, and all of them start by trying to understand what kind of knowledge do you have to enter this place. So in some places you enter and you have to be aware of the epic, like New York City, like Bombay. These are cities which come with a massive mythology. And to enter that place and to know anything about it, to function there, you have to enter that mythology. But other places whisper at you, and some places whisper obscenities at you, because the histories of those places are about tragedies and traumas. And if you are not privy to that private knowledge, those whispered things, those silences, then you can't enter that place or be intimate with it. But as somebody in my own life who's spent my entire adult life running away from my own place, from the country I was born in, there is also in my writing an intense desire to escape place completely. And it's interesting what you said at the beginning, because Kafka is one of the most influential writers, people that marked me and inspired me to write, and he writes things that happen in a non-place. And my first book was very influenced by a French theorist called Marc Auger, who wrote a book called Non-Place, and where he focused on all those places that are not part of the normal geography of people's lives, the shopping malls, highways, graveyards, underpasses, these places that are not places and that have the same character anywhere in the world. And my book was set in an airport where people are sort of stranded for a night, and in that place that is not a place, it's not even in a country.
For me, the elephant in the room is time, that moment in history. Because I've written 2 books. The first book, some of you may know it, it's a history of a family from 1930 to 2030, but the book was published in 2001. So at that point, 30 years were yet to come. And across that time, the book moves from Ahmedabad to Calcutta, to Bombay, to Delhi, to Paris, New York. And in a sense, it's not a book that's anchored in one place, except perhaps slightly Calcutta. What happens is it also moves across time, which people found disorienting at some time and sometimes quite exhilarating. The second book, which has just come out, Great Eastern Hotel, is very rooted, goes deeper and deeper into one particular period of time, Second World War in Calcutta. And it is about Calcutta, even if Calcutta is being looked at from the outside or from the inside, from that moment in time or from 30 years later. So for me, time and place are kind of inextricable, because as I started to research Calcutta of that time, I hadn't lived through that time, obviously, despite what Rahul was suggesting. I wasn't alive in the 1940s. I realized how different that place must have been. When I was talking to people, doing my research, it was like that Calcutta is still recognizable in some physical forms and shapes, but actually that sensibility, how people interacted, the codes, the whisperings, the obscenities have all changed, you know. In my first book, the main character is a protagonist, is a photographer. And again, with his photographs, he kind of anchors himself to a place and moves out of a place. In the second book, there's a painter who can't get away from depicting that time even many years later. So that time changes, and when I look back at the time that I've lived through my city, there's layers and layers and layers and layers of Calcuttas or Bombays or Delhis that one has seen across time. If you live long enough, you get that feeling of different places. The old Bombay, the old Calcutta, the old Delhi has disappeared, right? As has, I'm sure, the old London and Paris. So for me, where you get the intersection between place and time is what I think catches the spirit, because the spirit of the place 50 years ago, 60 years ago is not the spirit of the place now. I mean, I'm just looking at Jaipur, which I used to visit as a schoolboy, and it's completely unrecognizable, even though some of the trees and some of the smells are still the same.